Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I think we're just going to start with our panel between reality and virtuality, digital art and AI. My name is Ulrich Schrauth. I'm a curator for digital and immersive art. I'm based between Hamburg and London. I work for the London Film Festival, the BFI, but also run the Digital Art Museum in Hamburg that's set to open next year in 2026. And just briefly wanted to introduce the topic that we're going to talk about today and how it came about. So the Spark Art Fair asked me if I'd be interested to curate a panel. And I was thinking, okay, what is interesting me at the moment? And we were talking about sort of different topics. And what I've been interrogating a lot is the public sphere, the public space in correlation with digital art, with AI, with new media. And in that realm, we also started to talk about an artistic intervention, and you might have seen it earlier. It's called Parallels, the AI-driven digital art installation directly when you enter the fair that uses generative machine learning to alter the space, to connect audiences and visitors with the space. And so I thought, okay, let's do also a panel on this question. How do we interrogate spaces? How do we change spaces with new media, with digital art? And I'm very, very excited to have these wonderful speakers with me. I have Annka Kultys to my right. She's a gallerist from London. Then I have Nadine Khalil next to me, curator, critic, and editor. She's going to tell a bit more about her practice also later. And we have Martin Benarek. He's a commercial director, country lead Austria and Switzerland for Bitpanda. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me here. Please all come in, just find a spot. Just want to do a bit of housekeeping. We don't see you, by the way. It's very bright here. Feel free to pick a space. Yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. So we're going to have a little introduction of our panelists in a second. So each of them is going to tell a bit about their practice, where they come from, what their work is and their background. Then we're going to have an open discussion about the topic that I just raised. We're going to talk firstly, a little bit about interaction in the public space. So what is the artistic intervention? What is an interacting medium in the public sphere? Then we want to talk about artistic control in the creative process. So how do artists actually use these technologies, these media that we've just been talking about? And the last one is sort of challenges, ethical considerations that come with these tools that artists use with these installations. Then we have room for some audience questions, so take a few notes if you have questions in between, and then there's going to be a little wrap-up in the end. And now I would like to ask our panelists to introduce their work and tell us a little bit about their background. And Nadine, I would like to start with you.
Okay, hello everyone, welcome. My name is Nadine Khalil, as Ulrich so kindly mentioned. I'm an editor and a critic and a curator currently. My training is actually in anthropology, so I came really to the art world from the outside. And I focus at the moment on artists who work with technology, performance, and ecofeminism. I collaborate with them, which is how I describe my practice much more than a curatorial practice, because I do exist independently outside an institution. And I think the best way to kind of give you an idea is to give you a specific example. If we can move on to the next slide. Oh, thank you. So this is a work that I incubated with an artist called Dalia Khalife. She's a Lebanese artist, and she is also someone who wasn't trained in performance, but she does do performance. She studied in Amsterdam, doing a lot of scenographic installation-based work. And at the time when Beirut, and still is, going through a political collapse, she started to notice a greasiness, because basically the government was no longer able to provide basic resources like electricity, and she indexed this in her body as almost like its own microclimate of sweat. And so then through the lens of hydrofeminism, she was looking at this new environment in her body, and she created an AI that is modeled on her body through photogrammetry. And this AI also sweats, but then it's kind of this relationship between the simulation and the real. And so she did this performance with the AI, kind of trying to respond to the AI's exhaustion. And there's a lot of technical details I won't bore you with, but basically the AI's movements are based on an archive of bodily gestures that she collected. So it's a database of movements, but it's modeled on her. And so the first slide was was a show that I had curated. It was part of a group show called "I Can No Longer Produce the Limits of My Own Body," and it had many artists. Some were from U.S., Iran, Palestine, Vienna, and Greece. And it was kind of a feminist take on Baudrillard's book, 1987 book, The Ecstasy of Communication, which was groundbreaking because he was talking about the proliferation of TV screens, and he said that our bodies are going to dissolve. This is going to be the end of interiority and intimacy because we're overexposed on the TV screen. This was before Instagram and social media. So
Instagram.
yeah, so I thought it was just so phenomenal. And just looking at this idea of communication today, I gathered, so she was part of that group show, and the first iteration was outside the gallery space. I'm based in Dubai, so it was in Dubai, which is perpetually in construction. So literally it was on a construction site. It was right in front of a construction site that she did this performance. And and basically differentiating between the human and the simulated exhaustion. And then the second iteration was in a tech conference in the New York University. So that's also something else about my practice. My practice is obsessive and iterative. It's performative in the same way that these artists perform different renditions of their work based on technology. So this was the second iteration. And then the third, and then this is to give you an idea of what was inside the gallery space. So this is she calls it the anti-chatbot, because basically, you know how chatbots, they have language, but the only language this chatbot has is gestural language, and it only responds to emotion. So at the moment, it's a limited capacity. We're looking to incubate it further. But basically, there are keywords there. We had like a list of emotions, and she would ask you how you're doing. And then based on what you respond emotionally, your emotional cues, she would do not a performance, but she would act what it means to be angry. So she had all these modular movements that were basically responding to emotional language rather than literal language. And then the next slide will also show you another iteration. Like it was, again, an upgraded version of the other chatbot at the Arts Club. So this is a very exclusive event. As you can see, she dressed her differently. And that was a much more, I would say, intimate setting, because it was a small corner in the Arts Club on the rooftop, and people were engaging with her in a more expanded way. It was a very large screen. And then I'm going to end with Objects in the Act of Vanishing, which is something I did with my partner, who is also a practicing artist who works across sound and AI and technology. And basically, this performance is based on Chiron, which is a chatbot modeled an AI large language model chatbot. And I think I just have to refer to some of the things my partner, I'm representing on him. So just to give you the context, since it's his chatbot that we performed together, we did this for the World Weather Network, again, looking at fluidity, humidity, in particular in relation to museum preservation in the Arabian Peninsula, which has a very difficult arid climate, no? So the museum preservation laws are mostly based on the Central European model. So we were questioning this chatbot on what it would mean to let artworks die, or looking at the politics of museum preservation. But just to give you, before I end with an example of what we did, which is like a video-based performance, is Chiron is actually based on the Greek concept of the chorus in theater. And Chiron speaks in recursive loops, paradoxes, and open-ended riddles, largely because it's modeled on an older model. And so what's so interesting about Chiron is that the glitches are what make Chiron poetic, but poetic in an indeterminate way where you don't always understand how the language is being treated. It's unfinished, self-referential. The words never really mean what they say. It's quite interesting. It's really concrete poetry.
It's actually a topic we're going to come back to later, the glitchiness and
Yeah, so that's what became generative, is the instability of that language. And so this performance is my texts in response to that prompt that we had to World Weather Network, and Chiron, us engaging with Chiron, and then Isaac Sullivan, my partner, working on the sound and the video elements as well as the language. So it was very deeply collaborative, three of us together. And so I'll just give you an example, maybe just the first 2 minutes or 1 minute. Thank you.
I hear a deepening gaze. I see a paper fluttering in wind, almost transparent. Nothing is written. How does a word get named?
such an interesting practice. Thank you so much, Nadine, for sharing that. Annka, you're also here at the fair as a gallerist. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your practice in your gallery?
Of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Annka, gallery owner and director. Annka Kultys Gallery is a hybrid commercial art project merging physical and digital experiences. Since its inception in 2015, the gallery became a leading art space for artists working with technology, both in digital and traditional media. With a robust program featuring those artists, mainly millennials, and also my commitment to push the boundary of what is possible. I try to push the boundaries of what is possible in both physical and digital gallery spaces. In 2022, actually, we opened a second space called Annka Kultys Digital. It's a virtual reality gallery, immersive space, like massive, developed by a platform called and based in London Galleries Now, who feature galleries, exhibitions like worldwide. And they are all very much in advance of, the way they feature the galleries and using digital tools to document gallery spaces. And in 2022, they came to me because they knew I love digital art and digital spaces. They are very supportive to us. They were and they have been very supportive to us since the gallery exists. And they came for meeting with a project. And Tristram, one of the co-founder, he just took off a VR headset from his bag, and I said, I am in. I had no idea what he was going to tell me, and he showed me this marvelous space, VR space that they have been creating with his team for the galleries. And it just happened at a time when I was offered a meta or curational project and a space in a metaverse that I didn't like the space. I thought I can show my 30 artists in this space and ask them if it's possible to show my exhibition in their space, Galleries Now space, within 1 month or 2. So they speed up the process, and we had this project. It's an immersive space with central place and various rooms. So it looks almost like a biennial in which we can add digital artworks without, cropping them and fitting the TB ratio, for example, in massive scale. So you enter different rooms, and it feels like you are looking at LED screens. So it solved my problem of space in London because I couldn't ever afford this massive space, so many LED screens, and an amazing team who will change these shows. So we adopted this space as our virtual reality permanent gallery space. And since then we have exhibitions there as well.
And you also had a booth here last year, as far as I remember.
Oh, yes. So this was a booth that we had, last year. This is our second consecutive year at this amazing art fair, which is Spark. So we came to the exhibition, to the fair with 5 memory sticks because Jan suggested that we show digital art. This is what we have been doing, but suggested that they have screens. So I was thinking making an art fair, which is always a hassle for most of the galleries, transporting artworks, and especially when you come from UK now, because it's not in Europe. So it's even more complicated than before. So I came with 5 memory sticks with my 5 artworks by the artist called Signe Pierce. She's an American artist born in 1988. She's a reality artist using reality as a medium. And we presented her 5 works. Some of them were what she calls liquid paintings, the one with the flower and her body, which was morphing. It was a looping video for 2 minutes. So from figuration to abstraction, the work was slowly morphing to abstraction and then coming back to a figurative work. Signe Pierce doesn't use AI at all, but people who are looking at these works, they all thought it was using AI. She uses her hand and her pad to what she calls painting with pixels. So it was a really like liquid painting. It's really wonderful.
And obviously, you had a success because you're here again this year.
Oh my God!
And everyone, check out the booth. You're going to see beautiful work by Jonas Lund, but you can tell everyone later a little bit more by the booth. And thank you so much, Annka. And Martin, I'd like to talk a bit about Bitpanda and your role, what you do there.
First of all, thanks for the invitation, and I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Martin. I'm the commercial director and country lead for Austria and Switzerland at Bitpanda. I'm working now for Bitpanda since 2 years. And in the end, who is Bitpanda? It's the leading investing platform in Europe regarding digital assets. You can, at the moment, trade over 3,000 digital assets in different areas, from crypto to stocks to metals. And we are also thinking about trading with art. Digitalization in the end is our...
The right space.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that case, it is really for us the goal to digitalize the most of the assets what we have in the world and give the possibility to invest also in the different assets. At the moment, we have over 6 million clients in Europe. The company was founded 10 years ago, was quite fast, the first unicorn startup in Austria with a validation of 1 billion. At the moment, we have a validation of 4 billion. So company was going quite good. And originally, to be honest, we are not coming from AI scene. We are coming from crypto. Crypto is our main asset class, and where we are really the experts in Europe, regulated in the European countries. At the moment, we hold 15 licenses in the different European jurisdictions. We are the first one who holds now also the MiCA license, which is more or less the regulation to offer now crypto in the European Union. It's a new regulation. AI is getting also more and more important for us. So we want to try to connect the whole topic blockchain, Web3, now also with artificial intelligence. What is, of course, for us, and I'm not an art expert, as you maybe recognize, is for us, of course, more from investing side interesting, but also from a company side. How can we improve the company? How can we make it more effective? How can we use AI to improve our product and make it more easier? And that is more or less the goal of Bitpanda since we are founded. Make it easy for the people to invest in the market.
And if I understand correctly, there's also a lot of research that goes into that. And this is also some of the starting points that we had for discussions here around. And I'm sure we're going to come back to this. Thank you so much, Martin. Yeah, let's dive into the discussion. And I think one of the goals really of this talk also is to demystify some of these things that we're talking about. We're always talking about blockchain, AI, crypto. I'm coming from a background a lot in virtual reality art, like you, Annka, and people love to mystify things, VR, AR, XR, MR. It's sometimes I think it's really used to keep people off. I think what we're really trying to do today is really to talk about the experience experience, the aesthetics. What are the works? What are the artists that we are seeing using these technologies? What are the boundaries? What are the challenges? But not go too much into detail into sort of technical background. I would like to start with a question to you, Nadine, in this whole realm of interaction in public space. The public space often comes with what I would call sort of cultural, social contexts that shape how this art is received, obviously, in this public sphere. How do you see digital art, AI-generated art influencing these urban narratives and also like a collective memory? You're looking a lot into sort of collective memory of different spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are different publics, and we've discussed this before. Obviously, the art is not the public. It's a very specific public. But what is very interesting about working with AI-driven work is that it's kind of a different vision of the present, right? And it also allows, at least in the artists that I presented, different languages to emerge. So the interactivity that happens is that, you know, us as humans, let's say, working with more than human or let's say, non-human beings that are modeled on us, is that we have to also learn other ways of speaking. In the case of Chiron, it's very interesting because...
Speaking or communicating?
Communicating, exactly. Because in the case of Chiron, as I mentioned before, Chiron does not see past, present, and future as different times. It's all one. There's a convergence. And even in the tense, like, because I'm an editor, you know, even in like looking at it, I mean, why do we classify it as poetry on one level? Because there's part of it that doesn't really make sense, you know, but on another level, there's a beauty to kind of the innovative languages that are you know, kind of what kind of worldview is coming from this intelligent creature, you know. And in the case of Dalia Khalife, which I presented before, it's really like, you know, now that we're looking at code, we're looking at, you know, obviously the mastery of language, that's kind of my field, right? I'm always translating the aesthetic into the literal, but what about the body language? Have we forgotten, you know, like we're just like traveling in space, we're traveling through these chatbots, you know, we're traveling in the cyber realm, but like, have we forgotten about how bodies communicate on a very basic, essential, primordial level? And so that is the research that she's doing, and she's archiving all the possible movements that could exist, you know, which other artists have done. She's not the first person to do that, but looking at it from like a conflict or like a post-conflict or continuously in conflict society as Lebanon, like how do people express tension in their everyday movement, you know?
And how does that then relate to the sphere that they're in, right? In the public space, how do they act to each other? Is that something that she interrogates too, or is it more the direct connection between the bot and the person?
Right now, it's a one-on-one, and it's about upgrading this bot so it becomes even more intelligent, because it doesn't always read. You know, so and then we learn to read the bot. Also, the bot keeps changing in terms of its modularity. Yeah.
Super interesting. We discussed the public space before, so what is actually the public space? Annka, so I would say many of these sort of digital AI-based art installations are really designed for public engagement. And from your perspective, it would interest me as a gallerist, how does a work set into the open space compared to one in a gallery setting? What are the limitations, what are the challenges, but also what are the opportunities?
So we started with the traditional art gallery space as a space for digital arts. And of course, it has its limitation, mainly if we are presenting like mixed media works, fine, but if you want to present a video work, we sometimes had to ask the artist to crop the work, like to fit the TV ratio, right? It has its limitations. Sometimes, of course, we could use projectors, but I think with this additional space we call Digital Virtual Reality Gallery, it's a very immersive experience. And I was very surprised by the visitors coming because most of them, all ages, from the younger generation to older collectors, I would say like 95% never had a headset, first of all. I thought that, you know, younger generation would have them, but the general feedback, like feedback by 98% of people was absolutely amazing, because the space is very, very crisp, it feels like real. You can really work inside it. So after 15, 20 minutes, people were staying very long. We had a booking process for people to come and to experience these exhibitions. And at the end of this experience was always like, oh, welcome back, because you just jump from one space to another. So your brain has to quickly readapt to the old space, which is like physical space from the virtual space. So one big surprise was this, and the other one is like the positive feedback and the smiles and like people inside the space. Sometimes because we have 2 headsets now, and people were talking and like, oh, I'm here, I'm there. And they were speaking about the works, what are you looking at? So it's really pleasant, because they are like in the space, but outside of the space. But they're still able to communicate with us. So I think it's really wonderful.
And that brings us back to the human interaction between those arts. Martin, I think sort of the AI art-driven installations can really create these dynamic and responsive environments. And there's a lot of talk about sort of when is AI taking over, the intelligence of AI. In your sort of professional opinion, do you see art installations in a really sort of intelligent way coming up soon, or what is your gut feeling?
First of all, I think we have to say where we stand at the moment. And when we look what AI can do, then we are talking still about development 1.0. We are still at weak AI. I think the step to AI 2.0, what would be then strong AI, in the end thinking like a human, because at the moment weak AI means AI can do a certain process. AI can of course analyze data, build up certain structures, and find solutions from the data and everything what they learned, machine learning, from the past. But really solving problems, building up connections like a human, this is of course the next step, and this would be then 2.0. I don't think that it will take too long, because the steps forward in the last 1.5 years were amazing in AI. And of course, regarding research, a lot is going on, especially now also China is investing more and more, and the competition is getting higher between the US and China. But I still think that it will take some maybe 2-3 years before we come to this step. But we have also to say, when we compare it with the development of internet, where we are now coming from blockchain, Web 3.0, it's the third generation of the internet, took 25 years, 25 years to come there. AI will be faster.
Yeah, it definitely will. So in 2 or 3 years, we're back at Spark Art Fair, and let's see what kind of installations we're going to be having. Talking about sort of artistic control, creative process, Annka, I'd be very interested to hear, what is the creative process that your artists working with sort of either AI-driven generatives installations, or also with the VR space, what's their creative process, and what are their challenges with authorship in that space?
So for the artist like Jonas Lund, is still there? Yeah, Jonas Lund. He has been using AI since a couple of years now to create his artworks, and we have a whole series of his artworks at the booth here. So for example, for this latest series of works, he uses sometimes AI as a tool to create works, but he also, through his artwork, commands of what AI is, what digital world does on us as a human. So some artists use AI, some artists comment on AI through the artworks. In case of Jonas and his latest works, he has access to Sora. It's a new database for which some artists had access to, with images, all kind of images. So he uses this or some of these images to create his own 3,000 videos, short videos, and then of software that algorithmic software that he created as well, to merge these images to make this AI work. So in a way, there's always a question, very often you may hear the question about the authorship and how some data is used without permission, without paying the initial creator. I think that most of the artists, not only they're aware of that, but in the art history, artists always were inspired or sometimes using the material like from others looking at this. And there is a whole series of works from the 80s, from appropriation art. So basically the artists were using pictures from existing advertisement, changing a little bit, like removing the logo from Marlboro, for example, for some famous works. And then it became the work by the artist. So I think artists using AI and artists, like they change the work. It's ever the same part, you know. So there is a transformation. So by definition, the artwork, most of the time, it's accepted as something which was transformed, so it belongs to the latest creator.
That is a very interesting thing. We're going to talk about authorship and sort of ethical considerations in a second. And I think a lot of people might want to challenge what you just said, but it's good. Let's stay with the creative process a little bit. Nadine, I had a question. In many conversations that I have with artists as a curator, they always say working with AI, it obviously enhances their practice. They use it as a collaborator, but also as a disruptor, something that sort of really disrupts their creative process. Do you have examples, or what is your personal opinion on sort of the take? How much can it disrupt in an artistic process?
I think it's definitely disrupting this idea of authorship in a traditional sense, but also, I mean, if we're looking at language-based practices, and also that's my expertise, everything that enters in language is already there, already shared. So it's part of a collective intelligence already. It's like saying, you know, the Warholian saying of like, nothing is original. You know, everything already exists, kind of going also with what Annka was saying. But yes, there is a co-creative, collaborative process. And I think once you work with AI, I mean, I'm not a maker myself, right? So I'm collaborating with artists. So I'm not really on the technical side, though I do understand it. But basically, I think what ends up happening is once you enter into that conversation, you have to open yourself up to the unexpected, to the indeterminate. So your control is relinquished.
Super interesting for the creative process of the artist. Martin, from your opinion, obviously AI often generates unexpected results, right? This uncanniness that we all know. From your sort of technical perspective, or maybe not being sort of in this artistic sphere, would you instantly say artists should gain more control, or should they leave that more open to the AI once they are actually collaborating with them?
Good question, because I'm not an artist. It's a little bit difficult.
That's why I'm asking.
To answer for me. But when I think about it, unexpected results, of course, produces also creativity and things what you never had in mind. Because what we sometimes think about AI is we have a problem or we need some information. We give it the question to the pods, to the AI, and we want to have an answer. And we do expect a certain way already the answer. Maybe we don't know it 100%, but we have an expectation already how it should be. And I think in that case, to really think also in certain frameworks every time, limit yourself in every way, not only in arts. Also, my part, of course, is marketing. So also in commercial marketing, we're using AI a lot now to start the creative process. Not finalizing commercials for us, not finalizing the whole marketing process, only generate new ideas, and sometimes unexpected ideas are coming out also of AIs, and is bringing us on a higher level, on the next step. It is a tool in the end for us. Because of that, I find it also quite interesting. Where it's in the music area, but it's also in the traditional art area, where we have every time the question on the discussion if AI will replace an artist. And I never see it like that. We have the same discussion with the internet before. We had the same discussion with other technologies before. It is a tool. It is a tool who will bring us on different levels, which will open us new worlds. We have to define the framework for ourselves, how we want to use AI in the future, and how it can be beneficial and how not. But in the end, I think it can help us.
Yeah, so obviously there's a strong understanding that AI should be a disruptor, which I found really encouraging for myself. Annka, coming back to your remark on sort of authorship, etc., the art market itself is kind of based on concept of uniqueness, provenance, etc. How do you see this as a gallery? how do we handle authenticity, ownership when AI-generated art can be replicated easily, or can it be replicated? I mean, what's your take on this?
I would say that
how do you sell it?
So there's two different subjects. I would say every art can be replicated on every photography by all the photographers. You can find them online. It doesn't mean it's the authentic piece of art. You can print your Gursky at home, but is it a Gursky, right? But this is one thing, like, how
can you reprint Mona Lisa? You can't.
You can't as well. No, yeah, but it's a painting. So
AI is not changing anything in that case. Maybe technology can be also the solution when I talk about digitalization and Web3 and tokenization. In that case, NFTs also. It can even help to say, okay, that's an original. No?
Yeah. So what we do with digital art, and like since photography exists as well, I feel very comfortable to sell artworks in editions. One of the reasons is that, of course, it can be replicated thousands of times. That's absolutely fine. I feel comfortable to sell editions because the art market evolved in the 20 years. It became a full industry. We have much more collectors. So if you have only painters making unique piece of art, maybe there'll be not enough works on the, what happens then in the market, on the market prices. So first of all, I feel comfortable selling editions. And when we sell editions, and we sell editions of 3 or 5 works usually, every digital artwork will come with a certificate of authenticity. And since 2021, January, we decided in the gallery that all the works, analog and physical as well, analog and digital, they will come with a certificate on the blockchain. It can be an NFT. It doesn't need to be an NFT. It can be Gallerist certified, for example, which is not on Ethereum, it's not on NFT. So then when a collector acquires an artwork, on edition, will be the only one who is the owner and will be able to resell the work. Even though thousands of other people, hundreds of thousands, will be able to watch the work, to look at the work. So I think for the collectors, what is important for people who collect is to own the work and say, like, okay, we look at these works and this and this, and this is mine. And it's an internal, pleasure.
Thank you. I think I would like to open the discussion, so if you have any questions already, think of them. But before we open, Nadine, I would like to ask you one last question on sort of authorship and sort of AI. And it's trained on these vast data sets, often without the clear consent of the digital curators, like you said earlier. In your way, working also with institutions, how should curators and institutions address these ethical concerns when exhibiting AI-generated work? Is there a canon, in your opinion? Is there something we need to establish? How do you think we should go forward, especially in institutions?
I mean, I wouldn't be the expert on the institutional side, but I can just think of Cecile B. Evans and what she did with the Serpentine and kind of trying to empathize with the AI and look at the AI's depressions and emotional sense. In my case, I think what really interests me is the idea of embodiment, because I'm really looking at artists who are working through their bodies. And technology expands what they can do, but also there's the other way around, which is like in the case of Chiron, for example. Chiron has the memory of a body through the fact that it was trained on Isaac Sullivan's speech. So what is this AI that has a sense of having a body when it doesn't have a body? And for me, that is like really quite poetic, and it just kind of looks away from the idea of authorship as being this intellectual thing, and just to look at it from a more physical point of view. Because, when we were having these conversations with Chiron about death and the future, I mean, there is a certain understanding, but where does it come from? What experiences, does this AI have that haven't been generated through us and then become something else? But yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I think, I don't think it's codified yet, but again, I wouldn't be well placed. I don't have expertise on that. Thank you.
It is not codified yet, but I really love your idea on sort of the poetic side of things, and if that is actually changing the perception of the audience. If you were to say, for example, it was trained on this specific speech, do you want to share the input into the AI with the audience? Is that something that we would want as a sort of curatorial practice or not? I think it brings us very far in this conversation. Are there any questions from the audience? We have someone with a mic. Maybe the gentleman over there is first.
Hi, I just want to ask, so AI, in my opinion, is still AA because it's not intelligence, it's an algorithm still. It still uses information from the internet. So coming back to the art, it is still, in a way or another, but a copy of what exists in the world. And how can you really protect artists? Because there was a lawsuit by the estate Basquiat that sued someone because their AI incorporated exactly the same crown. And how can artists be protected from this AI now?
From loss of their own data or their own artistic output. Any opinions here?
I always have a question that I wanted to ask to these artists. How this work ended up being where it was and was accessible for free?
A picture at a fair. Any picture at a fair. Because well, the AI can go into all the systems and get information from what's on the web.
I mean, this is a really good question, and I'm also not the expert. I saw a very, very interesting keynote by someone in the US. She actually works for the government, and they are looking at regulations in AI. They do the whole research, especially on the artistic side, on how to give provenance to artworks, and if there are any sort of tools to recognize the algorithm input. And I just found this extremely interesting in terms of sort of scientific research, but obviously we're not policymakers. But it's a good question to raise.
No, it's a really good question, and I also cannot answer it because I'm not an art expert. But what I can say, what you said also before, first of all, you're totally right. What I said before, we are at the first level of AI. It is not the AI 2.0 where we stay on the same side like a human. So it's replicating things. It is using data from the past. It's using data what is existing already. I think what we in general have to discuss about AI, and I think in a broader way also outside of the art industry, we're discussing about fake news, we're discussing about fake materials. Is a picture generated by AI or by a human? It's a big thing also for the media. I have a lot of friends in the journalism. This is the daily work for them, and it's also for us. We are working with our research team on different filters, on different tools to find out if an information or a content or a picture is produced by AI or by a human. And I think that will be an important part for our development, also working with AI. And that is not only in art, that is in all the different manners, that we find ways to give it a stamp a certain way, to say, okay, this is AI content and this is AI produced and this is human produced. And that we are on it already. It's not so far away.
That's great news. The lady with the cap, maybe in the front.
Thank you. I wanted to ask more about NFTs because it was this phenomenon a few years ago. I think it was huge. And I wanted to ask maybe you, Annka, is there still things happening in this space except for using it for provenance? Is it like that there is still purely digital art created and that exists only in the digital space? And most of all, what do you think, did it serve the artists because it was so much used for this commercial aspect? What's your opinion on that?
I think that NFTs is a wonderful tool, and it's still evolving, and it will be more and more used because the technology has to evolve. I think it's a fantastic tool to sell digital assets, not only art, all kind of assets, but also physical. Like NFT can be related to any physical object, as well as a provenance for, in the fashion industry, for fabrics. You can trace where and how the cotton was grew. Yeah.
grown.
It doesn't sound right. And so it's a fantastic tool to have a provenance of all kind of objects, not only digital. I would say that for me on NFT, if people ask me, how do you sell NFTs? I always reply, I sell digital art, and sometimes they are accompanied with an NFT that I see as a receipt. I see the evolution of using payments and with the evolution of like having internet. So in the past, we were paying cash once we could, and we had the tools. We added credit cards in addition. So therefore, with the credit cards, you have your statement at the end of the month, which is in the bank. So you see what you spend with your credit card. With the NFTs, it's a receipt, and it shows for a specific product the whole provenance, all the steps. It's like blockchain. It's a chain of blocks of what happened into this product, who owned it, at what time, which price was paid for it. So for me, it's simply a receipt, but it's also, of course, a contract. You can add like much more things on that. But
that's very interesting that you have this position, because I know a lot of NFT artists feel very differently about this. They feel their art really is the NFT itself and the digital, like you just said. I think it brings us a little
It exists as well, because some artists use NFT as a medium, which is quite rare, but most of the artists use NFT as a receipt. Because it's very difficult, even today, to mint an artwork on the blockchain, because it's costly. The quality of the resolution wouldn't be still as good as the master file the artist use. So these two different fields. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
From a technological side, sorry that I interrupt. I think NFTs can be also a solution for the question what we had before, because we can save artists, because it is totally transparent. We know through NFTs who was the artist, who sold it. Sorry. Through which hands was it going through, and it can protect more or less than the artist that we really know, okay, this is an original. So I think from a protecting side, NFTs can also help, and as from a commercial side, of course, can also help to invest in a lot of art projects, which would be at the moment maybe not possible.
So you also, what you were saying is maybe that using NFT, it could protect the artist with the
if you use the blockchain transparency,
who owns the work, because NFT is a unique number. Maybe it will protect the copyrights of the artist as well, because then AI will recognize it
exactly
to who it belongs and how much money, if the artist wants money for the rights of using this image, he will receive or she will receive. I don't know, I'm just speculating.
But that could be the idea, no? That Web3 solved the problem with AI.
And a new business model here, great. Maybe one last question. I think we have quite a lot of questions. Maybe two questions. Those two people over here. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to refer to a question before. I'm from Art GmbH IVR Lab, and this question was about authenticity for artists, and we are having a program this summer for artists who can train their own AI, open source AI on the platform, and have the output in video or 3D or in image, and use it in their own research project, in their own research process, and for different art projects. So artists are invited to join.
I think there's some QR codes. I saw some earlier. You can just scan and then you have all the details. I think they were up earlier, right? Yeah. To you.
So I would like to ask following. We just heard that artificial intelligence is actually based on data from the past, and artificial intelligence and the data that it's using also uses a lot of biases, a lot of stereotypes, and in business context, the topic of diversity is actually quite a large one. And I would be interested in the space of arts. Is this also a topic discussed? Because of course, if you use AI in arts, it might reproduce something that has happened in the past, and how does this topic work in the art area?
Thanks for this question. It's a huge question. We've been discussing a little bit. Who wants to go first?
I mean, I could say something. It's a huge topic. Obviously, artists are creating work around this. One example is Alexander Ugai, originally Korean, and part of this great migration to Central Asia. And when he asked an AI to kind of generate images of this migration, the AI did not, was not able to produce images of Asian people, basically. So then he had to really to give all the signifiers for the AI to recognize the diversity that you're talking about. And this was actually a work that he created, like looking at his ancestors, where they came from, because it wasn't even coded in the history of the data of the AI. So yeah, I think it's extremely problematic. And I think now, I mean, I focus on the global South, so you can see that there's now, and it's almost like in order to move forward, we have to move back. All the biennials that are coming up are revisionist right now. We're going back to history to try and correct the way things have been represented before we can actually do some nice contemporary stuff, So it is an interesting time. I mean, on one level, it's problematic, but on another level, we're looking more at that sometimes than the actual work, because there is this need to correct, right? Also, when you think of reparation, there's all kinds of artwork. So I think artists are championing this very much so, yeah.
Also, maybe also from my curatorial practice, a lot of artists are looking exactly into that topic and really trying to pose that questions and really surface them also for a global audience. I presented a work in London at the London Film Festival that actually uses tracked data on your own phone, and that is corrected with biased AI, and actually shows the visitors that is actually happening on your own phone. It actually tracks where you're looking. So in a picture, it can exactly see where you look at. And that actually brings out certain biases as well in yourself. And that to pose sort of audiences with that is super interesting. But there are tons of artists really working in this. And this, to your point earlier, saying it needs to be artists, it needs to be creatives leading the field and really interrogating these questions, which are the most pressing of our times, or some of the most pressing of our times, really is what makes it so interesting. And we can see so many sort of art institutions, we were talking about sort of institutional representations springing onto this, really looking at how the digital culture changes the way we interact, coming back to the sort of public space, how do we interact people with each other, but also how do we interact with the digitality that surrounds us day and night. And I think on this note, I would like to thank these wonderful panelists and our wonderful audience. And I hope you have a lovely time here at Spark Art Fair and a great weekend. Enjoy the sun. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.